Calgary has many world-class sports and entertainment facilities, like the brand new Centre for the Performing Arts, with its distinctive skyline.
Albert Watson is one of the most successful photographers in America today, with over 250 Vogue front covers to his name. Born in Scotland 45 years ago, he tried his hand at a variety of jobs, from computer operator to stonemason's laborer, before choosing photography as a career. In 1971, after 8 years of training, he arrived in Los Angeles to seek his fame and fortune. They say that everything in America is larger than life, and Albert's new studio complex is no exception. Designed by himself, it's the first purpose-built photographic studio in New York, and it costs a staggering $3 million. Figures like this, Albert now takes in his stride. But at the beginning of his career, he recalls seeing the advertising manager of Max Factor after his very first shoot.
I went in the next day, and he said, I have very good news for you. He said, we're actually going to buy 2 of your photographs. And he said, here's the purchase order for the 2 photographs. So, of course, I thought this is wonderful because we were very short of any kind of money at that time. So when I got out of his office there, I ripped open the envelopes to find out there was a $150 purchase order in each envelope. So I was very happy with that. $300 seemed a lot. But then when I got home, I checked it again and found out that, in fact, it was $1,500 per image. And at that point, I thought they must have made a mistake, because that was $3,000. How could it possibly be $3,000? So I checked the next day. The advertising manager said, oh, I'm sorry. He said, that's all we pay. He said, $3,000 is the most we can pay for those 2 shots. So, of course, I immediately backtracked and said, no, it was wonderful. And then at that point, he said, actually, I have some good news for you. He said, we actually bought another one. He said, so there'll be another $1,500. So at that point in time, I thought, maybe this is I loved doing the day's shooting. I had a wonderful time doing the photography. And on top of that, I got paid for it.
Not one to look a gift horse in the mouth, Albert set about making a name for himself. He has now done 256 covers for Vogue, and in 1986, his reputation landed him a unique commission. He was asked to take the still photographs of a great state occasion, the wedding of Sarah Ferguson and Prince Andrew. It was a huge task, involving a great number of people, and required thorough preparation.
It was a monumental undertaking, because the end product is actually something quite simple. It's basically a group, if you can simplify it, it's a group of people standing in a room, to simplify it. But look at the people. At one point, there were all these cleaning ladies that were cleaning the whole room in readiness for the event. And we asked these 18 cleaning ladies, these Mrs. Mops, if they could possibly stand in as a lighting test. And I was at the top of this 15-foot ladder, photographing these cleaning ladies. And I had rehearsed many times that when I was going to be introduced to the Queen, what I would say. But suddenly I heard this voice saying, which one's me? So I looked down the ladder, and it was the Queen. So the last position that you want to be in, actually, when you meet the Queen, is, I think, at top of the ladder with her at the bottom of the ladder. However, she was wonderful, of course, and had a great sense of humor about all of the events that were taking place. And, well, we had actually an old hooter from a car that we blasted every 2 seconds just to kind of wake everybody up, as it were, because there was so much kind of tension in the room, positive energy, as if you can call it, electricity, with all of these people in that one room at the one time, that I think everybody's attention, it was very difficult to hold everybody's attention, especially the children, because the children, having sat still in the church for so long, were completely being children, were full of life, energy, and didn't want to sit down, even if it was only for 3 or 4 minutes.
Well, I'm delighted to say that everyone was very pleased with the results. Were you?
I think I was. I think that you have to look at you always look back at a project like that and say, how would you do it differently if you could do it again tomorrow? And I would do it again tomorrow. I think I was happy with the results. I think that the photography was very vibrant. And I think that we captured some of the saturations of color of the event. The color not only of what everybody was wearing, but somehow the magic of the event we got onto some of the film. And I think that when you project these photographs on a wall very large, let's say 12 feet high, I think it's a photograph I'll always be quite proud to show to anybody.
What's that you say?
David Bailey is 27 years old, and he lives in North London, just around the corner from where he was born. The house is rented from Islington Council, and although David has built his own darkroom here, he must rent a studio nearby or use his tiny living room for taking photographs. David believes that fashion photography portrays black people in idealistic rather than realistic terms, and his work concentrates on challenging what he sees as the false stereotyping of black people.
When we come to like images such as these, on the exhibition that I worked on called Positive Images of Black People, what I wanted to show was to engage people in images of black people that were kind of like visually aesthetic, because there is this convention that images of black people aren't visually aesthetic. Yet at the same time, I wanted to kind of engage people invisibly to say that, well, black people can do other things such as the normal kind of stereotypical images that you see of black people. And again, with this image of Joe Bones, a lot of images of Rastafarians are very kind of, in the mainstream media, seen as very, very threatening. I.e., you've seen him in the kind of like, if it's not in the right situation, it's always in a kind of a threatening situation in society. In this picture, I wanted to show Joe Bones with his children in a kind of more non-threatening role, in a kind of like, in some sense, in kind of like a passive role. And again, this is how he wanted to be photographed.
With his family.
With his family. I always think it's quite interesting and much more explorative to actually challenge a kind of like stereotypes and images that are kind of much more accessible to a majority of people. So in this image, this is the British Museum. And a lot of people say, well, okay, what has the British Museum got to do with black people? If you look at the history of the British Museum, it's one of like appropriation and one of control, appropriating lots and lots of artifacts from lots of countries, particularly like Africa, Asia, and bringing it back within this country. Yeah. Now, to me, that's very kind of symbolic of the way like photography operates. I can take a picture of something and then take it out of that context and then bring it back into my own context, i.e. the gallery or i.e. my portfolio or whatever, taking things from one context into another. And in that process of taking things from one context to another, you lose the meaning or you lose that kind of, if you want to call it, that essential moment or that essential truth. In the images of the British Museum, what I wanted to show was that the mummies are the most significant part of the image. The people are ghost images, yeah? I have to explore in a different direction and make people question or make people think about what they're looking a bit more. Now, the British Museum is, to me, a good example of that questioning process, yeah?
If the photograph doesn't immediately convey the message, do you consider that a failure?
Not necessarily so. You have to remember, there's like millions and millions of different photographs, and lots of people get different things from photographs. My photographs aren't to please every single person in the world. I mean, some people get something out of my photographs. Some people won't get things out of my photographs. A lot of my work is about the complexity of images and how images give off meanings and give off messages. My work is exploratory, it's not definitive.
Leaning back.
Albert's photographs must be immediately understandable to a mass audience. His job is to sell an image, a product, or an idea. And commercial photography doesn't come cheap.
It's very expensive to shoot here. Models are very expensive. Hair, makeup, stylists, locations can be a lot of money. If you're shooting on city property, for example, it doesn't cost you anything because basically the city feels that you're advertising New York. That's your cheapest location in New York, in fact, is the city itself. The minute that you shoot in somebody's apartment, however, it jumps to anywhere up to about $2,000 to $3,000 a day just to use somebody's bedroom, for example, as a background, you know. As far as the cost of models are concerned, very often we're shooting with 2, 3, 4 models a day. A model in New York is costing anywhere between $3,500 to $5,000 a day right now. So the fees can quickly get up to about $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 sometime for a 2-day shoot.
Is there a Watson style?
I think that's a very hard question to answer. One of my problems in the work that I'm doing is that I tend to like a lot of different areas of photography. Not many photographers are keen on still lifes and models, for example, as live action. I'm very happy doing a landscape, for example. I can quite happy spending a whole day shooting landscape. I'm quite happy shooting car photography and advertising. One minute I'm shooting a snake inside a shoe, and then another minute I'm in Paris shooting high fashion. Then I'm in the mountains in Scotland doing something there, or I'm shooting swimsuits on a beach in Tahiti. So to define style for me, it really in the end is for someone else to do that rather than me. So my preference right away would be to shoot this.
Is it possible to use the photographs together? Could the magazine?
No, I prefer the purity of a single image here, not as a double, because I think that this one here on the right-hand side here, which is facing Manhattan, is much more interesting than her coming toward, because here she's a model, here is a woman who's looking at Manhattan. It's taken a few minutes perhaps out of a restaurant that could be nearby, and in fact was nearby, and she just has a few moments alone. So therefore I think that this photograph has more romance about it, and also the fact that a girl or a woman photographed from the back in a way becomes more mysterious because you're curious about the way she looks. So my choice on this grouping here would be for sure this image here, where she's kind of against the fence, relaxed, and looking at the skyline.
In London, David is also preparing a fashion shoot. He's just as keen to get across a message, but it's more experimental. Less to do with selling a product, more with selling an idea.
What I'm going to try and do is explore some of the things we've been talking about with the issue about black representations in magazines and with black models. Now, the idea of this shoot would be, I purposely chose 4 white dummies to act as white male models. And then I'm going to have Rexford, who is a black model, to interact with the models who are looking, but really not looking at the magazines because their faces are blank. So the idea behind that is that the white models are passive, and Rexford is very active within the frame, interacting with the models, looking at the magazines, looking at the models, then looking at me, yeah? So hopefully we should get some interesting shots from that. I wanted to use an idea around black representation that involved white people in it, but at the same time because of the way white males are portrayed in fashion magazines, which I think is very kind of powerful, I didn't want to give them too much power within the frame. So the models, or the mannequins, I thought would be quite good for that because they're dummies and that's it. I can control and do what I want with them. What we're also going to try and do is play about with skin tone and hair as well, because what Rexford is hopefully we're going to try and do, because Rexford is quite dark to go against the kind of lighter skin tone, but also his hair, he's purposely slicked it back and he's going to make it white as well to give the kind of ambiguous feeling. And also he's going to wear green contact lenses, so it's going to look, you know, who is black and white within all of this.
Rexford, what do you think of David's particular style of photography?
His photography, I think it's fantastic. It's very unusual because, I mean, I look nothing like these people here. And it just completely transforms you once you see it on the black and white.
You've appeared in conventional photographs.
Yes. Many of the conventional photographs you find are a little samey. You look the same as everybody else. You don't look different in any way. Same style, the same type of hair, the same tones, the same lighting. And this is just a little unusual. But I think he's not scared to try anything out of the ordinary, just to see what happens. And it seems to work, more often than not.
If looking through Rexford's portfolio, a major magazine sees the work that you've done and they commission you to do an assignment, would you carry along in the same vein, the same theme?
Only if I was given the chance to do it how I want to do it, and without any editorial control. Otherwise, I wouldn't do it. I wouldn't do it at all.
Albert might regard as rather a luxury, for he has many demands made on him by his clients. However, he does have complete artistic control, as I was about to find out. Tell me about what we're going to do here, Albert.
Okay, rather strange shooting here, Gene, I'm afraid, for you. We're shooting snakes inside a snakeskin shoe.
Live snake.
I think it's going to be alive. We hope it's alive. So let me get the shoe on, and then I'll get kind of set up. Freddie? Let me just see. Okay.
This one is probably a little more distinctive.
Sure, that's terrific. Okay. So here's the shoe, Gene. Right here. Okay, so let's just stabilize the shoe here. Okay, I think we see enough of the shoe there. We'll rough it just now and then see what it looks like. All right, Gene, I think the snake's ready for you over there. We'll use the second snake on the left. So go ahead and maybe you can bring it in for me.
Right.
Don't be nervous, Gene.
Oh, snake. All right. Jesus!
Go ahead. All right, very gently. They're very fragile. So just bring it right in here. And as a matter of fact, you put it right inside that shoe. Because there's no way I'm touching that snake. Go ahead.
Put it in the shoe.
Okay. Bill, maybe you can give him a hand here before he does something horrible to the snake here.
Take the snake.
I have a great love of the studio, and I have a great love of location. I have no preference really between them. After traveling for 7 weeks, for example, it's a pleasure to come into the studio. And after being in the studio for 6 weeks, 7 weeks, it's a pleasure to travel. What the beauty of a studio is sometimes is the fact that it is a studio. And it has a thing in itself. I think that in a way, the nice thing is that you can be creative with light. You can make the light happen a certain way. You know, you can bring the gold out of the shoe, you can bring the snakeskin out of the shoe here. You can have the perfect light on the snake that you want to. So it becomes a thing in itself. A lot of the still lifes I do, I'm looking for very, very, very simple solutions. Something as obvious as a snakeskin shoe and using a snake with it. I think it's almost the most obvious thing you can possibly do. I've done a waterproof watch inside a goldfish bowl, which is about also as obvious as you can get. So the challenge is how you can take something very simple like this and very, very, very obvious like this and make something from it. And in the end, it's up to you, to the public, to come to a conclusion whether or not it's been successful.
Are there any underlying messages in pictures that you take, both personally and...
Well, I'm taking photographs completely, almost in an emotional way. I see an image and I record the image. As far as an underlying message, what you're looking at is my way of seeing things, my way of seeing the world. So therefore, as far as an underlying message, the underlying message is very, very, very simple, is the way I see the world. Either the imagery is working for you completely, that's the beauty of photography, is how it affects people. Either it is affecting you or it isn't affecting you. There is nothing more depressing than to have someone look at one of your pictures in a magazine and go by it without even looking at it, because in some way or other the imagery may have failed, or that person's just not aware or tuned into your imagery. So therefore, as far as an underlying message is concerned, it's really up to the viewer to discover that, explore it, and I let him worry about it. I'm doing it completely emotionally. The photograph is an instant kind of medium. It's almost like video, and therefore should communicate immediately the idea, the ambience that was there when I originally took the picture. Here I was fascinated by the beauty of the collarbones, the shoulders, the play of light across there, and then somehow this tremendous energy. It looks like she's bursting out of the shirt. There's a lot of drama here. There's a lot of power. You can almost visualize the expression on her face here.
Bearing in mind David Bailey's earlier views on exhibits in the British Museum, I was interested and surprised to learn what Albert would most like to photograph next.
There is one set of objects that I would in fact like to photograph and that I hope to be photographing later this year, which is a set of accessories that was owned by Tutankhamun that are now in the Cairo Museum. Sandals, gold nails, bracelets, headgear, Tutankhamun's wig.
If I could grant you a single wish, insofar as a commission, what would you like to photograph?
Nelson Mandela.
Beautiful town of Rye. Their photographic work came to prominence in the 60s, Terence's in fashion and Linda's in celebrity portraits. Over the years, Linda's photography has become more and more surreal, whilst Donovan, still in demand as a top fashion photographer, has worked increasingly with moving pictures. Terence Donovan is a larger-than-life character. Born 51 years ago in London's East End, his father worked as a lorry driver and his mother was manageress of the local Woolworths. He was only 15 when he decided that photography was to be his life. a determination that has paid off. 36 years later, Terence Donovan is an internationally famous photographer. Weighing in at 16 stone and standing 6 feet 2 inches, you wouldn't argue with him. His favorite sport is judo. He's a black belt, and he's as enthusiastic about the sport as he is about photography. Some would say that Donovan is a black belt in women as well, for dressed or undressed, over the years, they have made his fortune. It's the height of summer, and already the major fashion magazines are starting to put together their Christmas editions. Terence has been commissioned to photograph evening dresses for the Christmas issue of Vogue magazine. Prior to the shoot, he's been called into the magazine's headquarters for a meeting to discuss the commission and his ideas for the photographs. Present at the meeting are Vogue editor Elizabeth Tilberis in the pink, fashion director Anna Harvey, model booker Joe Matthews, and art director John Hind.
The thing about Vogue, it's the most famous and successful fashion magazine in the world, and it has a lot of power, and it's justifiable in power. It does sway fashion, it does change things, and it's a reference point, see what I mean? I mean, when you show fashion on television, it's very elusive, it's gone. But Vogue lies around for a long, long time.
Fantastic colour.
I mean, this has a huge bit of underneath it. So, I mean, it's the opera gown look.
Who made this?
This is Emmanuel.
Your photographs are very clean and very direct. There's a school that was going on for some time where the pictures were out of focus, a lot of action, a lot of movement. Yours are very still and very, 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 very precise.
Well, you know, I was brought up in a school of photography where it was thought quite a good idea to actually see what you're supposed to be looking at. Maybe an old-fashioned idea. And, you know, I've always felt that, I mean, one of the reasons why I started directing film years and years ago is if you really want movement, then you must have a movie camera and a soundtrack and a camera crew, and then you get movement. However hard you try and still photographs, at best it's a pale imitation of moving film.
So what we need to discuss next is which models and when and where and how. I mean, we're thinking about sort of end of July time to shoot it.
This girl's not available again, is she?
Cindy isn't, unfortunately, no.
Joe's...
I mean, I'll try for her, but it's highly unlikely I would have thought we'll get her again.
Who do you think we could have?
Well...
Would you like Anna, the two that we had?
Well, we were looking. Julie Anderson, this new girl in New York that we've just used, in fact, which everyone seems to be quite pleased with.
Mm-hmm.
Not a good card, unfortunately, Terry, although here are a couple more pictures of her. Very young, she's only 17, but really everybody's talking about her as being somebody...
She's a little bit Julie Christie-ish. I mean, she's sort of...
And then the other one is Cara Young. Cara Young, being this girl, bad pictures, but there are more pictures in the August issue. Very beautiful.
We are going to have to fly from the States.
She's wonderful.
So be happy before you commit yourself.
How important is the photographer, the choice of the photographer?
Terribly important, because we have an enormously wide range of very good photographers, and some do the most beautiful pictures running in the street and, you know, sort of on Holborn Viaduct on very hot days wearing fur coats, and others really do magnificent pictures in the studio. So what you have to understand for each issue is there has to be a balance. So we would like to show some coats and suits in the streets, and we'd also like to show some beauty in the studio. And it's very important that the photographer is the right photographer for those beauty pictures. So as a sitting starts to form in the mind of the fashion editor, the photographer is then picked with regard to the clothes that we're going to show.
Excellent.
It's lovely. So would you be happy if we could?
Yep.
Well, we'll try.
Let's settle for her. To a photographic college as such. I just got a job in Fleet Street and kept getting the tea and eventually started being a photographer. I was a military photographer in the army, and you can't learn photography much from books. You have to do it. You have to do it, and as the hours and the days go by, you start to get a bit more knowledge about it. It's clearly very complicated, because there must be a reason why so few people can do it skillfully.
Do you consider photography an art form?
No, I don't consider photography an art form. I consider it as a craft. But I don't even know what an art form is, in the sense that is something more of an art form because it's mechanically less efficient. I mean, the fact you actually got to paint somebody's face with oil and water, does that make it more artistic than somebody rearranging silver halides? I don't know, really. It's a question that I couldn't answer. I'm sure philosophers could discuss it for years.
At what point in your photographic career did you sit down and say, hey, I've made it?
Never. I never felt that. Because once you think you made it, I think you're on the slopes. I mean, you don't make it because you just turn up every day and do the best you can. I mean, that's all you can do. I mean, if you start to get there is a magic moment when you start to think you may have got what you had in mind on the film. That's quite exciting, but I think if you feel you really cracked it, I think the game's up. I mean, I think it's the feeling that tomorrow you might make it more correct is the thing that keeps you going. Because it's quite a hard job, you know, it's not an easy job. Because it's not like a television crew where you've got lots of blokes giving you a hand, and if you get in a tight spot, you can say to the camera operator, "We'll set that up and I'll be back in 5 minutes." But you can't do that in photography. There's nobody to set it up. I mean, if it doesn't work, it doesn't work, and you can't blame anybody else but you.
Your use of girls in the video has a distinctive Donovan style. Would you say that's true?
Well, you'd have to be the judge of that rather than me. I mean, yeah, I mean, it's difficult to do good pop videos because there's some very, very clever people making them. You know, a lot of serious heads are trying to become fresh and original. I spent my life doing what I really enjoy doing more or less every day. Do you understand that? So if it's filming, I enjoy it. If it's doing pop videos, I enjoy it. If it's doing stills, I enjoy it. They're all different. I mean, certainly stills is a more lonely job than filmmaking. I mean, the thing that is nice about filmmaking, you've got lots of technicians to help you through the slightly tricky patches. But documentary work is something that is more difficult to do than, I think, than a pop video. A pop video, you've got a structure, you've got the musical structure, so you've got some hooks to make the thing work. Whereas when you just turn up in Paris and just walk about, a load of blokes wearing denim shirts, that's basically what you've got to do. I mean, you've got to get it out of the ether, and that's quite tough.
And what Terence got out of the ether in Paris was this film he made with Clive James about the fashion collections in 1981. In fact, Terence's film and television work, commercials and documentaries, span some 20 years.
You try flying a B-52 over her, and you'll get a Sam-7 right up your tail. Writing a letter for help. With Mugler, the jockstrap finally makes it as a work of art. Note the coil of rope around the gentleman's waist to hang himself with if the party gets dull.
In recent years, however, Donovan has tended to concentrate on still work once again. In fact, tonight, he is at the Tottenham Camera Club in North London, where he has been invited to give a talk to the keen amateurs.
I just admire him as an all-round photographer. I think he's really good. And I've seen programmes on television about how he works, and that impresses me. He's got a good sense of humour.
I think this evening will be one of the highlights of this year's 50th anniversary programme, and we're all very much looking forward to it.
Good evening, everybody. Tonight I'd like to introduce you to a very special guest, Terence Donovan. Terence began his photographic career at the age of 15. A few years later established his own business. Since then he's worked in many magazines, including Vogue, Harper's and Cosmopolitan, to name just a few. Tonight he's going to give us a lecture called Speed of Light, so please give a very warm welcome to Terence Donovan.
The first thing that occurs to me about photography is it's clearly more tricky than we all realise, because there must be a reason why there's 20 million cameras in this country and a very few amount of people that can use them. So what I'm suggesting to you is that instead of acquiring more and more plant, sell it all and just get one camera and one lens and consider the fact that all photography is really, apart from the mechanical side of it, is your reaction to something. Now, if you're going to try and take fashion pictures in Tottenham Camera Club, you're going to have an extremely rough time, and I'll tell you why. Because there's the girl that I photographed last week for Vogue magazine, whose daily rate in America for advertising is $44,000 a day. And she doesn't come to Tottenham very often.
How important is it for you to actually come to these functions?
I've had a vast amount out of photography, and it's only reasonable to put something back to it, you know what I mean? And I also think camera clubs as a group of people are very they're fantastically enthusiastic and cheerful and pleasant to have around, you know? I mean, I don't do it very often, but I enjoy doing it.
And with locations all over the world to choose from, the people of Tottenham may be surprised at Donovan's choice for a photographic assignment.
I think out of all the places I've ever been, it would be probably to take a photograph in Rye in Sussex. I mean, I think Rye is one of the most, along with Bath, is the most exquisite places I've ever seen.
And by pure chance, it is to Rye that I have come to meet Linda McCartney, as a photographic exhibition of her work is showing in this small Sussex town. Her photographs are well known on the covers of her husband's record albums, although she was a professional photographer long before she met Paul McCartney. Born and brought up in America, Linda was working for Town & Country magazine when her big break came in the form of a press invitation to meet the Rolling Stones.
And I took my camera, my little Pentax, and off I went to this, it was like at a yacht basin in New York City over on the west side. And there were millions of journalists and photographers and people, because it was in the 60s when the Stones were very big. I was just standing there, taking it all in, when somebody came up and said, you'll be the only photographer on this boat. And I went, well, I said, well, I'm not really that good a photographer, you know, I'm not really here as that. They didn't really listen to me, so they said, all the journalists are coming, but no, none of these photographers, just you. So I get on this boat and we go out to sea, and it's quite fun, and I start taking pictures, you know. Again, black and white film, which was, you know, I think, lucky.
So these were the pictures that certainly I've seen, that I've printed, with Mick Jagger and the group. That was your first roll of film.
Yeah, well, first professional roll of film.
First professional roll.
Yeah.
Because you had done these photographs of the Rolling Stones, did that start you off with photographing all the other personalities of the day?
Well, several of the journalists, mainly the ones who were working for the teeny magazines like 16 Magazine, Hullabaloo, all the kind of group magazines, got to know me because they liked the pictures. And they saw that I could get response from younger people rather than just, oh, here come the boring old news photographers. So they started ringing me up and saying, well, I'm doing a story as a journalist on such and such a group. Will you be the photographer? So I started getting actual work that paid that way. And also a lot of groups starting to see my work, asking if I'd take publicity shots for them. It was a very relaxed, I didn't have a studio, and it was just an atmosphere kind of thing. And I kept getting work, and things grew, and Jan Wenner, a fellow who decided he was going to start a music newspaper.
What was that? What
came
paper?
over, and it turned out to be Rolling Stone. He came over and said, well, somebody at Electra told me that you had a lot of good pictures of musicians. Can I look through them? And I just had piles of photographs all over my apartment, because I'm not an ordered person, so they were just prints like that. So he went through them, and he walked out with a stack like that. You know, Aretha Franklin, as you said, Cream, Hendrix, Stevie Winwood, I mean, everything. He said, and then he went off and started his newspaper.
So you were literally the first photographer for the Rolling Stones.
Then I kept doing stuff for Rolling Stones because I became a freelance photographer. I did stuff for Life magazine and Mademoiselle and Time. It became, I'm talking about a lot of years went by, and I was that peak when I thought, I better get an agent. This is too hard, you know. And I still didn't have a studio because I was well into natural light, natural people and natural light. So it just grew from there.
Feature, and that there is Linda's touch. You don't leave it alone. Some of you will see something. You'll actually add something which is yours.
Yeah, I've looked at a lot of paintings in my life, and now a lot of photographs. And I think, having grown up through Michelangelo and Rembrandt and all the great painters, you then go through to Surrealism and Dadaism and sort of the, you know, abstract expressionists, and that too excited me. And I must say, Surrealism really excited me, or should we say, quote, turned me on.
Yes.
And I'm very interested in that in photography, to add a surreal element to the natural, not to go totally surreal or go, well, I go more natural than I do surreal.
Well, the other day when we went down to help, and I came down to see you, we took this wonderful photograph of this easel with the apples out in the open field.
Well, there you go.
What was the thought process behind that?
Well, very Magritte. I must have, you know, a painter who's influenced, well, he hasn't influenced my photography, he's just influenced my life, my way of looking at things. And I suppose, therefore, my photography as well. That was just a Magritte kind of, you know, most people copy Magritte, whereas I was actually using Magritte's things to create the image, rather than most people take clouds and paint them themselves, and a blue sky or a top hat, you know, things they think of as surreal, whereas I was trying to get the real elements and put them into a composition.
But it seems so natural, the way you did it.
Again, that's me, you know, it's just the way I am. I guess I'm in a funny way, a surrealist myself.
Well, I know that your photography is your own. I mean, you like to do it on your own. You don't like crowds of people around you taking pictures.
No, I don't think you can get your own thoughts when, you know, you're more aware of. Also, it becomes very tame when there are a lot of, civilized, when there are a lot of people. You lose moments, whereas my photography is very much about the moment.
Just down the road, just down by the
Well,
river.
what happened was I used to take once a week for a while. I thought, well, 10/8 is such a big deal that I'll actually make a day where I take 10/8 photographs, because it's a big, heavy camera. So one day I didn't know what to take, so we just got in the car and we're driving around, and I saw this chap getting out of a coal truck, and I thought, what a face, what an incredible face. So I just pulled the car over and got out, and I said, do you mind? I'd like to take a picture of you. And he sort of, don't mind. You know, he probably thought it was a click like that. Anyway, so we went in the coal yard, and I sat him on big mounds of coal, and then his friend came out. And I have some of the two of them together, which are fabulous. It was great.
What about this one?
Boys on the Beach. I took that probably about 20 years ago, in Barbados. And I mean, it's just fabulous because we rented a house right next to the public beach, so you get all these really strong, very happy, together kids, teenagers, and they get these wooden boards, you can see one there, and they surf on them. And the sun was quite low then, because I remember taking a shot of a boy walking right in front of the sun. But I just took a picture, as I say, it was about 20 years ago, and what I love is the way that person's bending over. The depth of field amazes me.
It was a very instinctive shot.
Yeah, and I love this face here, and just all the faces, yeah, and total instinct.
It'd be impossible to do again, wouldn't it?
For the CPRE.
Linda's close involvement with the Council for the Protection of Rural England led to a series of pictures depicting a local area called Fairlight, under threat from the drilling rigs of American Oil Company.
And you can see how this is where the nodding donkeys would have all been, all around there, and they would have chopped a lot of the trees down.
No.
And this is all similar. This is the only one that's taken on a 10-8 camera. All the others are 35mm, which, of course, you get the detail in the mist. But you see the beautiful area would just be ruined. And this is our daughter Heather riding along the area. I just like that line, that plane. It's called Long Rider. And this misty oak I took with high ASA film. It was a very misty day anyway, but you know, I had that kind of, I liked that kind of grainy effect. In fact, I go through periods of grain. I love grain. Sort of impressionistic. And that's just mist in the valley.
Linda's about to publish her third book, Sunprints, a publication that will coincide with the 150th anniversary of photography. Eastman is a name that features heavily in that history, and as it happens, this is also Linda's maiden name.
Since I've married my husband, said the Queen of England, I was known as do they call it heiress or heiress?
Heiress.
East McCartney marries heiress was on the thing. I have no relation to Eastman Kodak whatsoever. In fact, funnily enough, even as I was becoming a photographer and using Eastman film, my maiden name was Eastman, you see. As I was using Eastman film, I never thought to be a photographer because of the two names. But the funniest thing was years ago, we were in Los Angeles at a club, and a bunch of people, friends were at the table, and a few people I didn't know, and this chap says to me, "Oh, you're Eastman Kodak, aren't you?" I said, "No, everybody keeps asking me that. The answer is no." He said, "Oh, I'm glad you said that because I am, and I've hated you for all these years because I thought you were going around telling people you're Eastman Kodak." I said, "No, in fact, if you can tell people I'm not, I'd appreciate it." But, you know, people like to read lies because it's more interesting, isn't it?
If Linda had the chance to photograph anything or anybody on any subject in the world, what would it be?
If I had an assignment that could actually change the world, well, there'd be two. One would be showing cruelty to animals and experiments on animals that would change people from doing it, and also cruelty to children and each other. Obviously war, all the horror. I mean, that's what, if my photography could do anything, that's the only thing I'd care about.